welcome to today's MovingOT's Community of Practice event for July 2024. And today we've got our wonderful speaker, Helen, with us. So Helen Parsons is a registered occupational therapist and co-founder and director of Discover Tai Chi, which offers Tai Chi for Therapists CPD course, an evidence-based program for therapists who want to implement Tai Chi and qigong movements in clinical settings. So we're very lucky that today Helen's going to share some of her expertise with us and give us a brief introduction to Tai Chi and how we can, as occupational therapy practitioners, use the movements with people who have long-term health conditions. So Helen, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Lisa, and thank you for the invite. It's fabulous to be here and to be in the company of lots of lovely OTs. So yes, I'm going to share. So I'm going to go to share and get my, hopefully you'll be getting my presentation up very soon. Let's hit that. And so I'm going to look to folks to give me a thumbs up if they can see my, presentation seems to be working. Awesome. And I did want to ask people quickly, I don't know if you can put the poll up, Lisa. I just wanted to have a little bit of a sense of who has sorry, this is good off screen now. I'm multitasking with computers. Lisa was going to ask a little poll to see who's seen Tai Chi or even done Tai Chi or used Tai Chi in a clinical setting or been exposed to it in a clinical setting. That would kind of helpfully give me a little idea.
And it is not wanting to let me put the poll up.
Okay, no
worries. Tech gremlins have got me there. But maybe we could just do a quick in the chat, type in if you have participated in Tai Chi before, or if you've received any further training, maybe just type quickly in the chat and let us know, just so that we're aware of people's kind of learning from previously. That's a shame about the poll. I thought it would work. That's a shame.
Well, it's always worth a try, isn't it? The chat
is worth a go. That's it.
Brilliant. We've got some Tai Chi practices. Yeah, been the odd class.
That's right.
Hi, Carol. We know Carol well. She's been doing Tai Chi in her setting. Good to have you with us. Yeah. So brilliant. A whole range of people. Fantastic. Some people have seen the research. Some people have seen it on a stroke rehab. Awesome. Brilliant. Yeah, so the whole spectrum there. That's brilliant. Okay, so I'm going to hopefully get my presentation rolling. And this is one of our community classes out in a park. We've got a beautiful park setting and Phil teaching that class. And so we have a mixture of community classes. We also teach for classes for BLESMA, which is the veterans group. We teach for limb power, people living with limb loss, wheel power, people who wheelchair users. So we have a whole range of community classes, as well as doing the Tai Chi for therapists, which is the evidence-based work and CPD course. So very briefly, what are Tai Chi and qigong? Most people have heard about Tai Chi, and qigong is a sister art. We describe it as a sister art, and they're movement forms originating from China. And we can think of Tai Chi being more of a martial art focus or sport focus. And we can think of qigong being perhaps more of a therapeutic or health focus. That's roughly how they can be described. However, Tai Chi, the evidence for Tai Chi is there's been lots and lots of research on Tai Chi. So while it kind of originated within martial arts, it's now really seen as a health focus. So Tai Chi is described as a multi-component exercise as well by Peter Wayne from Harvard Medical School. He has done a lot of research, and so he came up with this model of the 8 active ingredients. And you can see that all the active ingredients are interconnected. They work over time, and the Tai Chi practitioner is at the heart of that, of putting the time and the practice in together and being able to draw these active ingredients together. as a therapist using Tai Chi, we can pull on those individual active ingredients and blend them a bit like a recipe in the way that we would like to use them in our setting. So the first active ingredient that we're going to talk about is something that should be, I'm sure that lots of our folks are well aware of, this idea of mindfulness. This is our local park. This is a class that's going on. You can see how quite slow the movements are. We're doing a little bit of balance there. And so that we've got slow, deliberate movements. We've got lots of attention being focused on the body positions. We might be aware of sensations coming in. So that can be internal sensations. So we might have proprioception going on, interoception, and obviously we've got sensations, vestibular system giving us information. We may also be aware of our breathing as well. So sometimes that's a nice focus for people, is to just let their awareness rest on the breathing. So we have the next ingredient, intention, belief, or expectation, and expectation. Again, as therapists, we can kind of draw on these as we need to. And we may already be using these in practice. We may work in a setting where we're already using some sort of mental rehearsal or mental imagery. So people may, especially in stroke settings, may use mental rehearsal. So they may be practicing a movement pattern that they've lost and trying to recover. They may be mentally rehearsing that pattern, like a reach to grasp type movement, reaching for a cup. We might also have metaphorical imagery. So we might imagine that we're moving very fluidly like a wave, or within a wave, or moving like water. So we might try and use metaphor with our movement to change the quality of that movement. We can also do guided visualizations. So again, something that's commonly used in practices, that kind of visualization where we might close our eye or use our internal mental imagery to take ourselves to somewhere fabulous, a beach perhaps, or a beautiful woodland, somewhere where we'd like to be, that would help us feel calmer and help us relax. Yeah, we often use that guided visualizations. So, and finally, we've got the idea of placebo or versus nocebo. So many people have heard the idea of placebo, having a positive idea about something can have a placebo effect, and conversely, the nocebo, if we have a negative expectation of something, then we may have be worried about a negative outcome. So, for example, people can have a placebo about Tai Chi because they've heard so many beneficial things about Tai Chi. They may have a nocebo idea about exercise. Exercise is that painful, awful thing. It makes me get really out of breath. It exacerbates my condition. So we can have very different expectations about something. People can have very strong beliefs about an exercise modality. So bringing those with us and bringing them out in the open, speaking to people about them. What is it that you think about Tai Chi? What do you know about it? Can help us work out whether they've got placebo ideas about Tai Chi or nocebo ideas about Tai Chi. Okay, so these are really useful ingredients as well for in the OT world. We may be working with people who are very kinesiophobic, and by that I mean people that are really wary of movement for lots of reasons. It can be pain, it can be fear of exacerbating symptoms, and so we may just want to start with something very, very easy like mental imagery, because we're not pushing them to do movements, to do exercise, which they may believe is going to be really painful or difficult or hurt them or exacerbate their conditions. So we might just start with something like mental imagery. Yeah, as we mentioned as well, mental rehearsal, it's great to use in stroke settings. Yeah, just a whole variety of useful things that we can use in pain settings. Guided visualizations might be used in pain settings as well, where we want to have some relaxation effects. It might be that we're just helping people cope with stress, so we might be doing some stress management, and we might be doing something specifically on mental health and well-being, so we might be using guided visualizations for that, where we want to really help them feel like they're moving flowingly like water. We want to have that kind of relaxation element in with it. Okay, so structural integration. So this is me teaching some young physio students. So we got them moving and we showed them the whole body coordination that's involved there. This movement's called brush knee. We showed the whole connection from feet to fingertips. So we're looking at biomechanical efficiency. So when we can connect sort of the lower half and the top half of the body, when we can show that connection, we can get people working much more effectively. Yeah, and integrating their movements. And again, that transfers over into daily life quite easily. So once people can feel more confident about their movement and move more efficiently, they can bring that into their everyday movements, their ADLs. So next one, active relaxation. So we have a big emphasis on these continually flowing movements, an emphasis on letting go, and the word we use for that is sung, which is to let go. So often people, when they think about exercise, they're thinking about putting in hard work. They're thinking about really putting in 110%. You know, we've had lots of messages about how we should do exercise. Tai Chi kind of flips that on the head a little bit, and again, it gives us this opportunity to let go, to do less. So we're often encouraging people to move at 70% of their expected range, or so do 70% of what they think they're capable of. Again, how do we use this in our therapeutic settings? It might be that we really need to start by building a therapeutic alliance. Again, some people are not moving. They become very distrustful of their body after an illness or an accident. They're not sure if they can do things anymore after they've had a significant operation. So they're not sure. So this gives us a way to build things up very slowly, to go at 70%, to do less than. Again, it can be about stress management, active relaxation. We're helping people connect with energy efficiency and reducing stress, reducing pain during movements, and that active relaxation is a really key for people who may be struggling with sleep. So often we get feedback about people doing the class and saying that they really enjoy going home for a sleep. They know that's going to be their best sleep of the week. So active relaxation really plays into better sleep. And once we know people have got sleep patterns are going better, then that can just obviously just plays into the recovery for so many conditions. Okay, so next ingredient. So this one's quite self-explanatory. The aerobic component. So Tai Chi is, in the research, comes out as having low to moderate intensity. There is a strengthening and flexibility component as well. This will really be for people who are quite deconditioned, though. If you've got somebody that's coming to you that has been very sporty or athletic, or is regularly doing a lot of physical activity, they might not notice the strengthening or the flexibility or the aerobic conditioning element so much. But when we're often looking at the people that really can benefit from Tai Chi, they're older, community-dwelling older adults, and they may be more sedentary than they should be. They're not following the activity guidelines. They may be deconditioned again after an illness or an injury. They may have become deconditioned, or they may just have become frailer over time. So a nice slow-moving exercise does have a conditioning element, aerobic exercise, strengthening and flexibility. So again, once we can get the people moving and we can improve that, that's going to really help with their day-to-day activities. It's also great for preventing falls, so we can maintain balance if we get older people moving. Especially community-dwelling older adults, keeping them moving is great for their balance, maintaining balance. it's great for maintaining confidence and improving self-efficacy and independence. So the older age group can sometimes feel, yeah, it can be very daunting facing older age, not sure what's coming. You know, having Tai Chi, an activity that they can do and can do really well, can really boost that self-efficacy. Okay, so natural freer breathing, our next ingredient. We're up to ingredient number 6. We're moving along quite quickly. So we don't focus on breathing, especially when we're dealing with people who've got maybe multiple health conditions. And we don't specifically focus on breathing. We often just ask people to breathe naturally, and the movements will encourage deeper breathing. So what we've often find is that people who are struggling breathing, putting the emphasis on breathing can sometimes be counterproductive. So for us, Tai Chi can get around that by having the inbuilt movement helping us breathe just a little bit slower, a bit more naturally, deeply. Okay, so yeah, really beneficial for people with respiratory conditions, people that are maybe need to conserve management in daily tasks. They can really benefit from realizing that just relaxing with the movement, going with the movement, can really help with their breathing. Okay, swiftly on. So social support and interaction. This is a photo of the 21st birthday party. So this is a group that I've only been with for about 5 years, but they've been going 21 years, and they get a huge amount of support and social interaction, just coming together and joining and doing the exercise together. We have something called social motion. So a lot of people might know that feeling of going to a dance class and everybody moving in time together. There's something profoundly moving about it. It can really help our well-being. It's called social motion. People sometimes have that from singing together. But yes, I mean, it's often used in military by just marching together is a huge form of social motion. It bonds people together quite strongly. So yeah, getting to people, if you do get to use Tai Chi in a group environment, social motion can be so important. So you can get people really involved in the group. People that might otherwise be quite shy can really feel like they're participating. Yeah, it's really motivating to come together in a group, to meet with peers who may be struggling with similar conditions as yourself. So yeah, and a great community-based intervention. So being able to provide, yeah, this in a community setting is fantastic. We've just done a podcast with a couple of OTs who were running a group, and it turned out that they did that at their local Sainsbury's. It was they used a community room at their local Sainsbury's. There was a community cafe. They were able to really build on this idea of social support and interaction on top of the actual movement. Finally, we're getting on to number 8. So the embodied spirituality and philosophy. So this can sometimes sound quite deep and a little bit daunting, but I think as OTs, we do get this, perhaps a little bit more than other health professionals maybe. We have things like the Cower model, where we understand, yeah, we can look at life in this metaphorical way. Life is like a river, it's flowing from birth to death, and in between we have this journey, and we have to engage with that journey. And we know that in occupational therapy, the doing is the process, the doing is the change, is the being and the becoming. So for me, Tai Chi and OT go together really well. We have this holistic framework. And one of the loveliest papers that I will reference was one called Making Peace with Ourselves. And it referred to, I'm sorry, just going to put this down. It referred to women's experiences of surviving breast cancer and what it was like to make friends with themselves again after being in going through chemotherapy and surgery and battling with people call it a battle with cancer, to eventually come to this place to practice Tai Chi. They felt that it was starting to make peace with themselves. So it can have that philosophy of how do we find peace in this very often difficult journey that we're navigating. So that was a really, really, really fast and so I'm going to stop the sharing, hopefully. I'm going to see if I've come back. Have I come back to full
You
screen?
have. We can see you again.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Apologies, that was a really whistle-stop tour. There is so much to say, and I just wanted to kind of look at the 8 active ingredients, but I hope I've just kind of sparked lots and lots of thoughts that there's so many possibilities. There's probably way more that may have come up in your minds just by going through that. But the best way to describe Tai Chi is to have a go. And this is the bit where I wanted to invite you to have a little go. So you're more than welcome to join in. We're just going to do 3 or 4 movements. We think we've got time for just 5 minutes, a little bit of movement. Obviously, all the usual caveats apply that if you know that you shouldn't be moving at the moment for whatever reason, you're overcoming surgery or an injury, and you know should be doing a specific movement, then do take care of yourself. You're welcome just to watch. I've got a good question there already. And what style of Tai Chi to use? I'm going to come to that at the end. The one that we're going to do at the moment is a style of Tai Chi, qigong, called the 8 strands of the brocade, or the Bad Jing. It's one of the 2 qigong forms that's really well researched. So we try and stick to the evidence base. We try and stick to those forms that are well researched and well known. So I just want to give you a little flavour. So you can do these movements seated or standing. If you are going to join in, just make sure that your space is clear, that you're not going to knock anything flying, that you feel comfortable and ready to do so. I'm going to step back. I'm going to make myself a little bit of space to stand up. So this is where I do my online Tai Chi from. Hopefully you can still see me okay. So after all that rush, now I'm going to slow down. I'm going to take a few breaths. So I'm standing, and the beginning part is just to make contact with the ground. So if we're seated, so exactly the same. If we're staying seated, we're still noticing our feet or our seat on the chair. We're noticing sensations coming from the ground, and we're just going to take a moment to breathe. So the first movement I'm going to do is 2 hands support the sky. So lovely evocative name as it sounds. Palms are facing in, fingers pointing at each other, and they're just going to come up. And then I'm going to take them as high as I want to take them. So everybody might be different. I'm just as if I'm going to push up towards the frame. I'm pushing up towards the sky. Again, if I feel comfortable, I can push a little bit higher, and then the hands come out and down to the sides. As simple as that. You might notice that I'm sinking through my legs or bending the knees. So, and again, you might notice that you might have heard me breathe in. That's how it feels comfortable for me. So we encourage people to breathe naturally as I make space for the air to come in. As I take the hands up, the breath comes in. Looking good, folks. Beautiful. And then we rest. We let go. We let the hands come down. Awesome. We're going to do that one more time. Turning the hands over, we support the sky, supporting the sky just for a moment, and then we can rest. We can let the hands come down. Lovely. So in between movements, I let people move however they want. They might want to have a little walk on the spot. Some people like to have a little wriggle. So it's always about giving permission. I give people permission to move however they feel comfortably. Okay, the next movement is called Wise Owl. And so, as you'd imagine, I'm going to be looking around. So I'm really using my eyes. And the hands are going to be down at the sides. So wherever feels comfortable, hands are going to be down at the sides. And I'm going to turn. And as I do so, I'm lifting both palms. One palm is going forward. One palm is going behind. So one hand is kind of disappearing from view. And I'm going to turn to look at that back hand that's disappearing. And then I'm going to slowly turn and face the front. So as I slowly come back to the front, I let my wings come back. So I'm going to just repeat that on the other side. So all I'm going to do is slowly turn. My shoulders are turning. It's as if someone's called my name over my shoulder. And so I turn to look, and I lift both hands and I look towards that back hand. And then I'm slowly coming back towards the front. So again, we're moving at sort of 70% of what we think might be possible. So unlike other mind-body exercises where we might be stretching, this is going within 70% of what we might think is possible. So again, I'm just going to turn. Again, I might just breathe in, breathing out naturally, slowly coming turning back to the front, and then just the same, turning, lifting both palms, breathing, coming back to the front. Awesome work. And again, in between, I'm just going to take a little walk. I'm going to have a little shake out, do whatever I need. Sometimes feelings come up, but when we're doing these movements, feelings come up. I might just kind of like, oh, and I might need to just shake it out a little bit. I might just start to notice things. And that's fine. We can take care of ourselves because Tai Chi is all about taking care of ourselves. Okay, parting the sky from the earth. So this starts to get a little bit more coordination going now. So don't worry. I think if we get a little bit confused or mixed up, that's fine. I've got one hand on top of an imaginary beach ball. We're using our imagination. One hand on top of imaginary beach ball, one hand underneath. So I'm going to go around that imaginary beach ball with the bottom hand. I'm going to turn the palm out and I'm going to push up and push down. As you can see, I'm kind of pushing towards the top of my screen. So, and again, you might go a little bit further. You might feel able to push a little bit further. Again, it all depends how you feel. Now I'm going to turn the palms to face each other. I'm going to come back. Now I'm going to take the bottom hand. I'm going to go again. So I'm going to go around that imaginary beach ball. Lovely. I'm going to push up and push down. Wonderful. Good stuff. Lovely. And again, so we're just repeating that movement again, pushing up, pushing down. Good stuff. That's parting the sky from the earth. Lovely. So we can have a little pause there if you wish. So one final movement. Okay, I'm going to do this. We call pull the boat in. Pull the boat in. It's got other names. So I've got my hands in loose fists. And again, so you could be seated, you could be standing. If we're standing, we're trying to relax down the legs. So you might notice that I've got this little flex, this little bend in my knees. I'm grounded down my legs. So I'm nice and balanced. I'm going to reach out with one hand. So you can see me reach towards the screen with one hand. Then I'm going to open the palm and wrap my hand around an imaginary rope. And then I'm going to pull it in. As I do so, the other hand travels out. So nice loose fist. Now I'm ready to open the hand. I'm going to circle the palm. That's it. And now I'm going to pull the rope in. Just like so. And again, circling that hand, pulling in. Good. And again, opening the hand, circling and pulling in. So once you know the movement, we can really imagine there's a bit of, we're using our imagination again, using that mental imagery. We're relaxed through the shoulders, but we're imagining that there's a bit of weight behind it. And so I'm really pulling, really putting some intent into that movement. Okay. So we're going to have a little pause there and we're going to finish there. So that was a quick snapshot, just a few movements there from a qigong set called the 8 Strands of the Brocade. Yeah, which is a very popular set, really easy to learn. It's a great okay, the 8 Strands of the Brocade. The question was, what is it? So I'm going to write that quickly in the chat. What we've just done is the 8 Strands of the Brocade. Oh, can I type that in?
Thank you, Helen. That was fantastic. While you're just answering that in the chat, I just want to say that felt really relaxing for me. I don't know how other people feel. I can see a few nods. So yeah, I feel lovely and relaxed now. I don't know whether other people have questions. Please feel free to unmute and ask, or you can type it into the chat if you'd prefer. I know Laura's already asked about the style of Tai Chi, so thank you, Helen, for sharing that. I'm just going to be quiet a minute and see if anybody wants to unmute and ask questions. I've got loads, but please, please unmute and ask.
I'll just say, maybe to give people a minute, maybe to compose a question in their head. I'm just going to say a little bit more about the styles of Tai Chi. Yeah, there's 5 main family styles of Tai Chi. So people think, what do they mean? What style of Tai Chi? 5 main family styles. Chen was considered at the moment the original style. The most popular is Yang. So that's where we find the majority of the research is in Yang style. And that's because it's really popular. So it's been easy to find teachers of Yang style. And it's been easy to find participants of Yang style. So that's where the most evidence is for. So when we teach our therapeutic, when we talk about this with therapists, we kind of explain that a yang style is the most popular. There are other styles. Sun style has been shown to be good for people with arthritis. It's a much smaller stance style. It's a narrow stance style. Yeah, but I'll leave it there in case anyone's got any questions.
Thanks, Helen. If anybody wants to unmute and ask, and maybe I'll ask a question while people are having a think a minute.
Yeah, please do.
So I wondered, because you run courses for therapists as well, and maybe this is kind of speaking for yourself, but also for some of the people who've been through the course, I wondered if there were like any challenges that either yourself or other people have come across in terms of integrating Tai Chi into their clinical practice, and whether you could share a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I think probably the main challenges are learning the movements that ourselves. If we haven't been doing Tai Chi before, I don't know how people felt just doing those movements, whether people kind of thought, oh, I'm not sure if I'm getting this right. Oh, I'm not sure if I've got this. So to be patient with ourselves when we're learning the movements. So while it is a challenge, it's also the reward, because I think doing the Tai Chi with patients, like I say, we can have that relaxation effect on ourselves, and who doesn't need that? So it is going to take a little bit more time and investment to learn the movements than perhaps other forms of therapy will. I don't know. But yeah, there is that time investment in learning the movements first. So I think that's probably one of the major challenges.
It's a really good point, though, in terms of it being something that we can use for ourselves as practitioners as well. It's something, yes, for our patients, our participants, but it's also about something that you can use as your kind of own kind of modality to an intervention for yourself, which is fantastic.
Absolutely. Like say, at the end of the day, the middle of the day, taking a couple of minutes out. Sometimes, we talk about mindfulness a lot, but a lot of people, it's very hard to sit still, to do mindfulness and to be still, for lots of folks. And yeah, so having this moving form of mindfulness, and the cueing, just moving slowly and helping ourselves slow down and breathe a little bit slower, can be really beneficial for so many people who've tried mindfulness and can't do it otherwise. So we've had a how do you see people progress? Yeah, so that kind of would depend on what we were teaching them for. So there's lots of ways. It might be that if somebody's very, very deconditioned, we may start them seated. So if we were talking about that, the active ingredients, we want to see them a bit stronger, or we want to see them the aerobic conditioning improving, then we may go from seated to standing, and from standing to stepping movements. So we may progress them, in the complexity, in the actual movement physically, the difficulty of the movement. We might also increase the complexity of the movement. So we might start off with some very, very simple movements and then cognitively increase the challenge. We can also increase the challenge by getting them to remember the movements and show us. So we can have that sort of complexity. We might get them to teach other people. So if we're doing it in a group setting, we may challenge them, their confidence levels or something like that, by, okay, you show somebody else now. So and sometimes we don't even have to tell them to do that. They go home and they're so excited. They're like, I've got this skill, I've got Tai Chi skills, and I'm going to show my niece, my nephew, my brother, my uncle. I'm going to show somebody that I've got skills, and that's something they can be very proud of. So yeah, kind of we can also load the movements, so we can bring in medicine balls to hold instead of, we can do roll the balls with loaded with weights. So lots of different ways to kind of, depending on what we want to get out of it, how we might progress. I hope that's useful.
That's great, thank you, Helen. And also we've got a question from Aniela as well about what the benefits of Tai Chi are in falls prevention, which is a great question.
Lovely, thanks. Yeah, so it's one of the biggest areas we often hear about Tai Chi for falls prevention. So that's the evidence is for community dwelling older adults. So that's talking about older adults who need to maintain their balance. So rather than thinking about somebody that's already falling, for them we know we need a multimodal intervention. We're going to have to sort out reasons why they're already falling regularly. Tai Chi might be a part of getting them back to where they were, building confidence. But for community dwelling older adults, we should all be doing something. In the physical activity guidelines, I'm sure you guys are all over this. It's MovingOT's. The physical activity guidelines are that all adults, we should all be doing something twice a week to challenge our balance. And for older adults who don't particularly want to be running about anymore, because a lot of people give up racket sports. Racket sports are awesome for our balance, but as we get older, our joints may not appreciate running about playing squash anymore. So people tend to swap to slower things, and people they come to Tai Chi going, I just fancy something different. I fancy something different. So we should be doing something to challenge our balance. So so that's where the evidence is for Tai Chi. So that's where Tai Chi falls into the UK, is included in the UK activity guidelines. It's there on the little infographic, and we should be doing it twice a week if possible.
Fantastic. Thank you, Helen. I've just put in the chat there, just very quickly, the kind of World Health Organization physical activity kind of fact sheet, which has a lot of the guidance on. There's also in the chat the reflection template as well. And I'm wondering if people want to just click on that quickly, and they can then make a copy of that to be able to record their own learning from today as well. I don't know whether we've got maybe 5 minutes to go very quickly into breakout rooms. If we can, we'll see if the tech gremlins come back again and see if it'll work. But we can maybe quickly go into breakout rooms and just have a look through that reflection template just to guide our conversation a little bit. So it follows the Rolf template of what, so what, now what. So thinking about what we've learned, what the relevance is to our practice, and then now what we're going to do to change our practice potentially from this new information. So I'm wondering whether Sam can have a go at putting us into breakout rooms. Oh, Sam, you just
muted. On mute. There you go. That's how good I am with technology. I can't even. Okay, I will give this a go.
Yes.
Okay.
And we'll just go in for 5 minutes or so, just for a quick discussion, and then we'll come back and just have a quick chat about the things that we were talking about in our groups. Hopefully you'll be invited to a breakout room now. You'll see through the magic of the internet. Oh, no problem, Joe. Great to see you here.
That okay.
Has everybody been allocated? So I can still see we've got Alison still with us. Alison, have you been? You haven't been allocated to him, okay?
No. So it kind of worked. It almost worked.
Yeah, it almost worked.
Not
well, maybe we've created our own little group here.
Should we just have a
maybe this is our breakout room? Yeah, everybody else seems to have. Yeah, we've got a nice little group.
I see that as a triumph, personally.
I think it's a win. I think we've done well, Sam. Alison, how are you?
Thank you for this exclusive group.
I know. Yeah. Looks like we've got a couple of people. So Aniela's around as well. Aniela, I don't know whether you can still hear us, whether you've been invited to a different breakout room. Potentially you're joining us in the group that has been chosen to stay in the room. I'd like to put it like that.
That's it, yeah.
That's it. That's how we'll go with that. Yeah, sounds good. So we can have a quick look through the reflection template maybe, and just think about what specific Tai Chi movements did you find most intriguing, whether you're used to using Tai Chi in your practice. So kind of be interested to hear people's thoughts on that.
I'm currently on the training with Helen at the moment.
Yes. Oh, fantastic. Yes, I remember, Alison, that you were saying that you were signing up for that. Yeah. Yes. Fantastic.
And I thoroughly recommend it.
Brilliant. No, that's really good to know. Oh, and yeah, so it says I've been put on hold for some reason. Oh no, that's not good, is it?
Sorry, I'll see if I can.
I don't know. Well, it says, yeah, mute participant. No, it's not allowing me to mute you, Aniela, so I don't know why. I'm not in a room, but I can hear a room. Yes, Laura, I think you're still with us. So I think we've got Laura, Aniela, Ali, and Ashley potentially. Good stuff.
Apologies that this isn't.
So yeah, it might be that some people, and the tech gremlins are playing their tricks today, aren't they? It's been very interesting. That's really good to know, though, Ali, that you've been enjoying the course so far, and you found it really valuable in terms of your therapy practice.
They are, so they already grade the activity for you. So it's kind of like it's delivered on a plate. It's absolutely wonderful. With other training, you have to grade it yourself.
Yes, yeah.
I highly recommend it.
Brilliant. I suppose it's having that OT perspective, isn't it? Because Helen's a qualified registered OT. She's done such a good job of making that kind of adaptation to those movements already, and thinking about how they could be used with different conditions, which is fantastic.
So we've got so we've gone through all the physical health conditions and mental health conditions. So it's so fantastic.
Excellent. So I suppose we've kind of talked a little bit about the what of the new information that we've got. So we can maybe move on quickly just to so what. So what's the importance of the new learning? Do you see any benefits for your clients? I don't know what client groups we have kind of within the room, and feel free, if you're muted, and I'm sorry if you are muted, feel free to type into the chat as well, just to kind of join in the conversation, because we can still see what you're typing into the chat. So Ali, thinking about your client groups, do you think there are specific people that you're working with that as you're doing that course, you're already thinking this is how I could apply it?
I think you're almost, I would say after week 1, you're ready to roll with it.
Brilliant.
So I've used it in 2 clinical settings and 1 with my mum as well. And I felt confident enough to also post pictures of her doing it on social media, on LinkedIn. And I think the main thing is it's achievable for everybody. And when you think about Tai Chi, I hadn't ever really thought about it being in a seated practice.
Yes.
Normally when I've seen it in media, it's been in China, etc., and it's been people in a park and standing. So that's been really useful to see that it can be used in seated. Yeah.
Brilliant. That's a really good point. And I agree that
I think
typical. Go for it, Sam.
I was just going to say, it does seem that it can be, it's really sort of dynamic that you can use it. I was thinking, of course, you have falls, but then thinking like long COVID as well, you could have that as a possible, and just having that option that you can, but it is just sort of naturally slow pace, so you get that. I think that's going to be for certain populations very, very accessible straight away.
Absolutely. And I can see in the chat, Ania's said she found out about Tai Chi when she was researching falls prevention for her dissertation and wanted to learn more, which this session has given me great insight. So that's really good to hear that we've had a go as well, which I think is really nice to experience it for yourself. And Ashley's added, so I think it's also great to have found out you can give the seated option for clients, who might have a harder time. You're right, there is that traditional idea, isn't there, that it's a standing exercise, but actually, in common with a lot of different physical activity, things that people might be involved in, there are ways to adapt it for pretty much any group, and it's really good that that this is something that we can offer to people as well. I'm wondering, Sam, did we set a time limit on the breakout rooms, or do we have to call people back?
We call people back.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe if we do that in the next minute or so, that might be good. And we can just carry on our conversation and move on to now what maybe. So that's what will I do with this new information? How will my OT practice change? So what's one small way we could start exploring or experimenting with Tai Chi in our current practice, or what other colleagues or professionals could we collaborate with? So Ali, it sounds like you've been able to kind of implement it from the start of the learning kind of process within that course.
I also think so. There's a lot of noises going on here. I think that it's exactly how Phil and Helen have presented the course, that you do feel as if when you've had the first introduction, you feel that you want to roll with it. And I found it really useful to even start as a warm-up to some of the other exercise groups that I do as well. So you can use it as a main activity, as a warm-up, and also just an introduction to movement, just getting somebody in standing. And there's also sort of, I think there's quite a bit of interest in Tai Chi as well. So there's almost like a proud element that people have, that actually, wow, I've just done Tai Chi.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, then I've just done an exercise class or something.
Yes. Yeah.
Have a lovely crossover. I
That's
definitely
a really good point.
That she has never felt, as if I put in my social media post, she's never felt sporty. And so then to now be able to do some Tai Chi and yoga, it's made such a difference to her self-belief.
That's fantastic to hear. And you're right, there is that barrier sometimes that people have around exercise, or going to an exercise class, going to a gym, and it's quite an intimidating space sometimes, depending on people's like previous experiences of exercise. And that can go as far back as, thinking about how they experience sport and exercise in school. So some of these, barriers are quite deep rooted. So I think offering movement in a way that's very different to that can sometimes be a really, really good thing. So Aniela's also put into the chat. So she thought about how she could find out if there's any Tai Chi groups in the local community to signpost to as well. So that might be a really good place to start making those connections as well, so that you've got something once participants or patients might be discharged from a service. How can they carry on that physical activity within their community? I think that's a really good point. Yeah. Have we got people coming back again, Sam? Do you know if they're able to get back in? I don't really know how it works.
I can bear with me. I'll bring people back.
Yeah, sounds good.
Well, I'll try and bring people back.
See if they start to come back in, float in through the ether.
It tells me that it's going to move people back.
Well, there you go. Well, some people are in the lobby. That's good. We can let them back in. Fabulous. Okay, I'm hoping everybody's back again and we haven't lost anybody in the shuffle. Yeah. I think everybody's back. Is everybody back? Pretty much, I think. Fantastic. So we ended up with our own little group that wasn't a breakout room that had been contained within this room. So that was quite good, because we had our own little breakout room there. But I'm just wondering from the other breakout rooms whether there were any kind of reflections or points just for the last few minutes that we can kind of share, maybe, if anybody wants to do that. Go for it, Daisy.
Happy to talk always. In our room, we talked about kind of the practicalities of making it happen in a clinical setting. So whether that would be needing to be trained or how you would actually deliver that. And then I shared that my role is kind of in preventative active aging type role, and that actually a lot of the work at the minute is the signposting to the classes that already exist. So a kind of a reflection that might be a helpful first step for people, but equally you don't want to kind of lose the therapeutic value and the input that we have as OTs in that way. And I guess kind of that's the sports for confidence bit, which Sarah shared around having the OT input, but that it being in a public setting. So kind of just shared the reflection of the practicalities of delivering it in a clinical setting versus using what already exists and how you can plug people into it.
Fantastic. That was a bit of a discussion that we had in our group as well around community resources and, you know, learning about what's already happening in the local community so that we can signpost people on, because it may be that within certain roles, you know, people get discharged maybe from a service. How can we continue that kind of physical activity that you may have, you know, involved them in as part of your service? So yeah, it's fantastic to think about how we can carry on that journey. Yeah.
Yeah, can I add something to that? Because it's a
Go
really,
for
really
it,
good point.
Helen,
Yeah, there often are really good community classes out there, but we need more. So if anyone's
Yes.
looking for a side hustle, but also the fact that yeah, it is good to go and check out what is happening in your community, because somebody's mentioned what levels of Tai Chi are offered from beginning to advanced to push hands. And obviously, if you're dealing with somebody really deconditioned or a fear of falls, somebody after, you know, a big life-changing event, they might not want to go into a real hustle-tussle, push hands, full contact class. We have known it happen and when people are expecting this very slow, calming experience, that they may have had done a couple of sessions in a, you know, in a setting, in a hospital setting, and then suddenly they go into a contact. So do go and check out what's on offer in your local community. It's really beneficial to find out what's on offer, if it's going to suit the person that you're referring. Yeah, it might be that you've got a young person on your hands who wants something more full contact. It might be that you've got somebody elderly who really doesn't want that. Who knows?
That's a really good point. Yeah, it's about grading that appropriately from that kind of onward referral as well, isn't it? All Tai Chi isn't alike, is what we can take away from.
Yeah, we kind of mentioned the different styles, they can be taught with different emphases, and yeah, we just want to make sure we've got the, you know, the person to the right place for the sort of so they can feel successful as well.
Fantastic. I'm wondering, does anybody want to share any final thoughts just before we finish today? I'm just having a read through the chat as well. Feel free to unmute if you've got a burning question. Go for it. Have a look through and see if there's anything that we've missed in terms of questions.
So I just wanted to my group that I'm on the course with Helen. Hello, Helen. And I thoroughly recommend it. I think it's really good that we can signpost, but it's so good to know about the movement ourselves, that then, you know, we understand what we're signposting people to. And I agree with Helen. I think it's great that we're actually now we offer this as a treatment method. Yeah, I think as OTs, I'm really so positive about us doing movement.
Absolutely. Lots of nodding heads. I think everybody agrees with that, which is fantastic. And you're right. It is more about movement. You know, we talked in our group a little bit about the difference between offering people like an exercise class and it being exercise or sport, and how sometimes that brings up barriers. So it's not always the most positive experience, unfortunately, that people have had with that.
Am I okay? Have we got time for me to answer a couple of these questions?
Go for it, Helen. Yes, please do.
Apologies, I realise we're over time, and if anyone knows to go, I'm not offended. But the question was, are OTs allowed to instruct in Tai Chi if they're not a trained instructor? So there isn't one overarching body in the UK. We do have the Tai Chi Union of Great Britain, but they're not the single body, as it were. We don't have one. So it's about you and making sure that you're working within your current capabilities. So you need to make sure that your training, you know, whatever training that you need is you've done, and you need to go and speak to your insurer. You might need to go and speak to your setting, your clinical supervisor. So you just need to check in with a few people, you know, in terms of if you're just going to use one or two movements, then it's probably going to be pretty easy for you to get going. If you're talking about, you know, building full-blown classes, you probably want to make sure that you've got some, you know, some good instruction behind you, some good guidance behind you. But yeah, as allied health professionals, we're, you know, like as Ali said, we're very, you know, we've got a lot of the skills we already need to go out there and do that And the other really good question that we had was, have you encountered a situation wherein your client's cultural background is a barrier to accepting? Thanks so much. Really good question. Again, if people feel that this might be something going against their religion, they might need to go back and speak to their whoever it is in their organization, their church, or whatever that might be. We're doing a class in a church at the moment, and they've asked that we didn't call it Tai Chi, that we called it Tai Chi style exercise. So yeah, you will come up against this where people just feel like it's just encroaching on their beliefs a little bit. Obviously, we don't come from any particular perspective or religion. We're not pushing a religion. It is rooted in a China from a particular time and a culture, so some of those elements will come out, but you don't have to bring them in when you're teaching them. And it's, yes, you should always be person-centered. If the person doesn't have the interest in learning Tai Chi and feels it's against their current beliefs, then absolutely, we should always remember to be person-centered. So just because we're passionate about it doesn't mean it's right for everybody.
It's a really good point. And yeah, that's so true. It's about meeting people where they are in their kind of journey through movement and physical activity. It's not always going to be that people are ready or able at that point to take on board that messaging, or, you know, it's really interesting, Helen, that you brought up the fact that you were calling it something slightly different. The movements were probably very much the same, but to work with that certain cultural group, it made more sense, you know, at their request.
Absolutely. And I think we can be very free like that. And Carol's mentioned here, hi Carol, she's mentioned calling it enjoyable movement. And I think that's again about how we present it. Again, we can call it enjoyable movements, mindful movements, mind body movements. If any of those terms are more appropriate for your folks, or just like say, calling it enjoyable movement makes it a lot less scary or less tied up with any sort of that's going to cause a challenge to personal belief, then we can just help take the bits that are going to be useful and beneficial without kind of presenting a whole complex unnecessary details that people don't need. So
yeah, fantastic. I love that enjoyable movement. I'm going to take that away with me. I think that's a fantastic way
we
of
never
putting it,
mention
Carol.
Exercise at all, because obviously people they've got chronic pain, and some people have got ME, you know, chronic fatigue, and any mention of exercise or graded exercise is really just scary. So to say enjoyable movement, and it does work well then. So we never use the word exercise.
Excellent.
Brilliant. You're in the same page as Bronnie Lennox Thompson. She's a OT that does lots, isn't she, on pain. She's at New Zealand, Auckland University, I think it is. Yeah, and she does absolutely the same. She never talks about exercise, but she talks about movements that we enjoy. So yeah, in good company.
Fantastic. I love it. Right, well, we've come to the end of our session today. Unfortunately, I'm sure we could stay and chat all evening, and unfortunately we're bringing the session to a bit of a close. So thank you all for joining us. I'll just finish the recording.